Hello and welcome to another Lamp Bible Study. My name is James, your host and Bible reader for Lamp Bible Study. I hope your day has been wonderful and full of all kinds of joy. And if not, cheer up. We're in Lamp Bible Study. Lamp Bible Study it's always exciting to me, and I hope it's exciting for you as well. And so, thank you very much for joining us. I hope we continue to read and seek wisdom through the Holy Word, through the Lord's holy Word. And we are currently in the book of First Samuel, and we'll be starting with chapter 16 today in First Samuel. And I'm currently reading from an NIV Collegiate Bible, and I will be, like I've mentioned before, going over the different versions of the Bible, different types of translations that there are of the Bible eventually. So let's get started with today's word. uh, Before I do, though, right before I do, today has been quite interesting, and wherever you are, I hope and pray that you are having a good day. And if you're not having a good day, I hope and pray that it gets better, because it will get better. And so we got to live each day because there is a purpose for each and every one of us. So let's get started. Let's start to read 1 Samuel in chapter 16. Samuel anoints David. So we're getting ready to go and be introduced to another person, a new person who is going to be very important. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." But Samuel said, "How can I go? Saul will hear about it and kill me." The Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, 'I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate.'" So, a little quick refresher. Samuel had originally anointed Saul to be the leader of Israel. However, because Saul was someone who looked like a leader, who represented what stereotypical would be of a leader, as in our minds and humanistic thoughts and patterns. And so he was taller. He looked like a person that would be a leader, and he wasn't. And the Lord was with him. However, Saul made choices that were not aligned to what the Lord had in store for Israel. And so the Lord was showing Samuel that there actually was a person that he wanted to go ahead and lead his people, and that would become a king, and that's David. And David is very important, because if you've read the Bible before, if you haven't read the Bible before, it's going to be what do you call it? Getting ready to give away something, and that is David is in line to Jesus. So David is very important, and we'll see why here during this Bible lesson. And so with what we just talked about, because remember, Samuel, he anointed Saul, and so he, in some ways, took it upon himself. It almost like, not necessarily a father, but somebody he administered to, somebody he brought into fully worshiping the Lord, or being held of esteem, And so we have Samuel, who is a priest and a prophet, and was told to anoint Saul. And so he kind of, to me, in some way, he kind of feels responsible, a little bit responsible. And the Lord's telling him to, it's time to move on. It's time to move on and get Israel the proper leader. And so that's where I feel like Samuel's just kind of still not necessarily in a regret or anything, just kind of in that moping, kind of like feels responsible, wants time to contemplate everything that he's seen and been through, and the Lord's ready for him to move on. And so it's all in the Lord's timing, and the Lord's telling him, "It's how long will you mourn for Saul?" Let's let's get to stepping. And so when it comes to myself, do in our thoughts, past to present, do we do that? Do we lose someone like in real life, even maybe even as of to death? Do we mourn? It's okay to mourn, but do we take it to another level? Do we continue to mourn past holding on to grief, holding on to misery, instead of looking at the blessings that we had, the time that we were able to spend, and looking ahead and knowing that, whether it's in death or whether it's in time to move on from friendships, from even family, from even coworkers, from even people, or even programs. You could look at it as in moving on from one program to the next. Do we kind of try to hold on to things? I think so. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Samuel did what the Lord said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. They asked, "Do you come in peace?" Samuel replied, "Yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. So during this time, parts of Israel were slipping away. And so they knew Samuel was a prophet. And so they kind of were at fear with him because they knew that he was of God. So he could be coming to prophesy their destruction. He could be coming to prophesy something else going on. So they were in fear, in a general human thing, knowing, acknowledging that there could be something. And there were other things going on. So for all of those that do know or do think they have researched and such, leave it in the comments section about what was going on during this time, and how and why the people of Bethlehem, the elders of Bethlehem, were worried about Samuel's arrival. Let's continue to read. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Says a lot. Says a lot. This is a sermon right here. Is that true? Do we as people quickly judge by appearances? Absolutely. And so me, myself, I try the darndest not to judge people by their appearances, because you never know. You never know who you run across. It could be somebody that, for whatever reason, they look like or they act like however they act, but they may be an angel in disguise, somebody who is beneficial to you, someone who is going to be a leader, someone who's going to do amazing things, and you just never know, or maybe even save your life someday. So these are things to think about. And the Lord's telling us, he's telling him back then, he's telling past, present, and future. The Lord does not look at things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So he's already saying he knows people, who knows who each and every one of us are, whether you are going to acknowledge him or not. He knows every single person. And so right here, we also notice that once again, Samuel arrives and he sees somebody who looks like would be a leader, but the Lord rejected him, rejected that person, said that's not who you're going to anoint. Move on. And the Lord has to do that with us, to us. So a fair warning to us: don't be quick to judge. Don't judge people. We're here to love each other, and love each other is acknowledging each other and understanding that we all have pain, we all have issues, we all have seeking love, and we're also seeking that thing that fills us, which is the Lord, which is the wisdom from the Lord, which is God, and Jesus our Savior. Without us having a Savior, we would have been made, we've been created, and we would die in sin and be away from the Lord for eternity. And that's something not to want or look forward to. So we are very grateful and very thankful for our Lord Jesus. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" I think that's funny because it can go so many directions. You could look at it as in Samuel's like, he knows that there's more children because he's prophet. You could say maybe he doesn't, and maybe he's like, okay, this one passed, this one needs to pass, this, all these sons can take a seat, but the Lord told me that I need to anoint a son of Jesse, you know. So, but I think Samuel knew, and so, and so it's hard to tell what Jesse's character was at this time. Let's continue to read. "They're still the youngest," Jesse answered, "but he is tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent and had him brought in. He was ready with a fine appearance and handsome features. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David in power. Samuel then went to Ramah. So, again, we don't look at appearances. We know that the Lord looks into our heart. The Lord sees us. The Lord sees you. The Lord sees me. He sees what we feel, what we think, what we want to do, what we do, how we act. He sees everything. He knows us. So we may give appearances to other people. We may act a certain way. We may talk a certain way. We may think a certain way, especially when others are around or around different types of people. However, the Lord knows the truth. You know, he knows it. He knows your truth. He knows my truth. The Lord is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning, the end. He's the now, and he's the present. So, and he's with us. So there's a lot here to think about as well. What the family thought, Jesse and his brothers thought of David when they saw that Samuel brought him in and then anointed the youngest one. And according to this, may have not been the biggest one either. Was ready with fine appearance and handsome features. So he looked okay. You know? It's almost like the writer's trying to say he looked, he looked okay. He looked fine. He looked maybe normal, nothing standoutish. What kind of do we get that? You look okay for a dot 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 dot. I know. I know. I people said it to you look okay for dot dot dot. We're all human. Why can't you just be like, you look okay, you look good, you look okay. It's always got to be for a dot 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 dot. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. David and Saul's service. Now the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. Saul's attendants said to him, "See, an evil spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord command his servants here to search for someone who can play the harp. He will play when the evil spirit from God comes upon you, and you will feel better." So Saul said to his attendants, "Find someone who plays well and bring him to me." One of the servants answered, "I have seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the harp. He is a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well and is a fine-looking man, and the Lord is with him." Then Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, "Send me your son David, who is with the sheep." So Jesse took a donkey loaded with bread, a skin of wine, and a young goat, and sent them with his son David to Saul. David came to Saul and entered his service. Saul liked him very much, and David became one of his arm bearers. Then Saul sent word to Jesse, saying, "Allow David to remain in my service, for I am pleased with him." Whenever the Spirit from God came upon Saul, David would take his harp and play. Then relief would come to Saul. He would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. There's a lot here. So David was someone who I believe in the Lord, walked in his ways, and was someone who tended sheep. And is an example. So Saul was a person who was anointed and was leading Israel. So he was doing what he was told he needed to do. He may have not followed everything that the Lord had said, but he was given the anointing to lead the people. And so, and then here comes David. He's requesting David or someone to help calm his spirit when he gets angry, when he gets goes through this torment and wanting to do things that are not good. And so we have David come, and he plays the harp very well, and every time David plays for Saul, it calms his spirit. It calms him, and so that the evil spirit would leave him. That says a lot about even us today, past and present. When we walk in the way, and we are doing things, and we are doing what we need to do, what we're to do, that can bring a calming presence to other people. Very interesting that this is coming up in my mind, because it just happened recently. So there was a question, and I don't know if I'm going to rephrase the question or how, but it had to do with how people react and how people in churches react, and people go to churches, and people may also shy away from churches. So we have an issue where you have somebody that goes into a church and they feel put off. They feel like it's not welcoming. And that is something to think about, because in churches, a lot of people expect everybody that goes to church or attends church to be happy, extremely happy, at peace, and happy, and wanting to spread the love. Does that happen? Does that happen all the time? So, what I mentioned is you have the person that comes in that's seeking that happiness and peace and that resolution. And then you have the church who also have people who are coming in there seeking happiness and peace. You do have happiness and peace, but you also have people that also want to be fed as well. So how do you look at it, and what do you do, and what do you think about, and what kind of thoughts come to your mind? You have from both sides. Not necessarily is the person that's attending the church always constantly happy. They are going through struggles, whatever that may be, with the walk with the Lord. And then you have another person that comes in who doesn't necessarily have a walk with the Lord just yet, but they're seeking. And so they see that other person that may have the walk with the Lord, but they can't feel it. They can't see it because the feeling is repressed. That love giving may be repressed because they're too busy seeking for themselves. And so that's one thing that churches work through. What I said is, if you are walking the way, and this isn't necessarily always something that is controllable, but it's something that we can think about, meditate on, and give to the Lord. When we are struggling and we are having a walk with the Lord, it's always okay to, I know in some cultures it's not okay to look someone in the eye, though, to acknowledge them, to say hello, to say, hey, happy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. God bless you. God bless today. I hope you have a blessed day. Jesus loves you. Whatever it may be, even a small acknowledgement, a smile, a wave can change somebody's attitude, can change somebody's spirit, because you never know. And it can change yours too. You may feel hurt and you may feel pain. We can, in some, and I heard this too, you can choose what to be and how to act and how to feel. And so this may not necessarily be easy, but it's something to think about. And it's not saying being fake. By all means, everyone's emotions and feelings are there. They're there for a reason, because we are human. We are mortal humans. And so if there is a way to change it, though, even for an instant, even when you're down and kicked in the ground and muddied and just hurt by the world, hurt just in a hurt place, you do have that walk with the Lord, take a moment and think about something that the Lord has blessed you with, something that the Lord has done for you, that you know, or just being thankful and humble. That can also help change, especially when you're around others, because they may need to see something. They may need to see that reflection back from you, that the Holy Spirit, the Spirit, the love working through you, even for a fraction of a second. So think about that, and give it to the Lord and pray about it. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? I know there's a lot here. It's sermon after sermon. Let's continue to read. David and Goliath. This is David going through another very known part of the Bible. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Socoh in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes Dammim between Socoh and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. Again, like I mentioned in previous Bible studies, if you know how to pronounce the words, pronounce them with us. If you know how to type them out and such, put them in the comments and I'll go over them. I always look at the comments, read the comments. And let's continue to read. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. He was over 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs, he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. This dude was a big man. It was a big dude. Okay, and so one of those that would bring attention wherever they, because just at their stature, at their height, maybe even the presence. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. So the Philistine may have not been like the leader, but he was like, "Hey, let's get this over with." So he's taunting. He was like, "Look, I can wipe y'all out if I wanted to, but just send your bravest and we'll do it over this one battle." And basically, all odds on the table for one battle. And of course, this terrified Israel. But why? Think about it. So we're at a time where the Lord is Israel's God. So why are they terrified of someone? Bringing past to present. Do we do that? Do we do this? Physical or whatever have you. I think we do put limits on God. We put limits on God's power and authority. Think about that. Do you put limits on people? Do you know people? Do I put limits? These are things to think about. Why would they be afraid? Why would we be afraid? I think in a lot of cases, it's our humanistic side that comes out. But also that's one of those quick reactions. But also it's also in a lot of cases has to do with lack of faith and the strength of our faith. And or knowing what to do immediately, because a lot of it also has to do with not knowing what to do. So we get thrown into a tough situation and we're trying to figure it out. You are trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out. They are trying to figure it out. We are trying to figure it out instead of giving it to the Lord immediately. Because we can do that. We can give it to the Lord immediately. You can do that. Even if you don't know who the Lord is, you can say, "Hey," because he's alive. Quickest way to start a relationship. Try it out. Give it to the Lord. These are things to think about. And so think about it. Israel was terrified. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time he was old and well advanced in years. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to war. The firstborn was Eliab, the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. Interesting. Another 40 days. A lot of dates with that specific time frame, 40 days. Now Jesse said to his son David, take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. But they weren't fighting. They were terrified. They were basically lining up every day. And then Goliath would come out on the Philistine side and challenge them and heckle them. And then the Israelites would just stand there, terrified. And then everybody would go back to their camp. Let's continue to read. Early in the morning, David left the flock with his shepherd, loaded up and set out, as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and greeted his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath the Philistine, champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. And David heard it. When the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear. Once again, physical appearance. Now the Israelites had been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his father's family from taxes in Israel. So it's already done got to Saul, and Saul's like, look, whoever does him in, you get this, and that. He'd already done got an award, set up. No takers as of yet. David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine or removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? So using the term uncircumcised is like really talking bad about somebody. Meaning like they're idol worshiper, adulterer, you name it. Let's continue to read. They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the desert? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. Dang, that's a charge right there. Eliab does not like David, his youngest brother. In fact, is telling him he's selfish, he's conceited, he's like into himself. I mean, he's kind of lazy, I guess. Do family members do that? Yes. Do people in the Lord's family do that to each other? We're not supposed to, but does it happen? Yes. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? When we get to the New Testament, we'll see that it continues. Even until now, but we'll see. It's just one of those things that you can disagree, and it's okay to disagree, but then we go beyond disagreements. So let's continue to read. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, okay, so we already read that. Now what have I done? said David. Can't I even speak? He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter. And the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. Saul replied, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy. And you're only a boy. I just you're only a little boy. You're only a tiny little boy. Look at you. A little boy. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm right now. Every time I read this, it's a little bit different, but and he has been a fighting man from his youth. Basically, like it's like, you're a little guy, Put her there, little guy. And he was probably a little annoyed, He was like, you're supposed to be here tending your sheep and playing the harp when I get angry. What are you trying to do? Little kid? What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. Listen to that faith. This is the faith that we need. David knew, he believed in the Lord. He knew that he would be successful. He knew it. He had that faith. And he compared the Philistine to these other terrifying things that could easily kill him, easily kill people. So think about that in our lives, past to present. When those tough times come up, when those challenges come up, we need to immediately give it to the Lord, not stop and think really hard. Oh my gosh, I'm so scared, or how am I going to make it through this? And think about all the disasters or consequences that can happen. Give it immediately to the Lord. Allow the Lord to give you an answer, or even do the work for you. A lot of times we don't even have to do anything. It's resolved. It's been resolved. We just need to relax. We need to relax and give it to God. Think about that. Let's continue to read. Saul said to David, go and the Lord be with you. I'm going to read that one more time because that's strong. Saul said to David, after David had told him everything, because that's that confidence, that's that strength, that's that faith in the Lord, and how it exudes, it comes off of people, it comes off of you, it comes off of me when you have that walk, when we have that faith. It's that love that comes out, that strength comes out. And so this is what Saul said. Saul said to David, go and the Lord be with you. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I am not used to them. So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand approached the Philistine. So he's going out there with a sling and some rocks or some stones. Faith. 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 Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "I am a dog that you come at me with sticks." And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." So, for one, the Philistines were insulted. But hey, consequences, right? And that's another thing that we need to look at. Like, when those things happen, we give it to God, and God can turn it around or change it, fix it, correct it. And forces working against you, people who, whatever it is, they're the ones in fear. They're the ones now. That thing is in shock. That thing is now over with. That thing has now ended. That thing has been insulted. There you go. And so let's continue to read. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." Use those words against him, didn't he? "All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. So I'm going to read this little portion, or this portion right back one more time. all those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's. Think about that, past, present. Think about those words. Pray about those words. Meditate on those words. Have a conversation with the Lord about those words. Those words are truth. Those words are things that can help us in our faith, can strengthen us, can give us that support, can give us that encouragement that we need. That exactly what he says right here. Not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and it still is to this day. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Shaaraim road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put the Philistine's weapons in his own tent. There's a lot here, and I'm going to continue to read. As Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" Abner replied, "As surely as you live, O king, I don't know." The king said, "Find out whose son this young man is." As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul. With David still holding the Philistine's head, "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." That was all important. So, David, showing that he had so much faith, and he gave it to God. And he was an example for the rest of Israel to see. And it brought encouragement and it brought hope to the rest of the men along the battle lines. So when they saw that David killed the Philistine with a sling and a stone, okay, not a sword, and then the rest of the Philistines were terrified because their hero, their person that they put on a pedestal, tumbled to the ground. Their falseness tumbled to the ground. So they were terrified. So reversed. Now Philistines were terrified, not Israel. Israel was strengthened by seeing someone of faith, someone have that faith, that strength in that, and strengthen them, and they were able to rout the Philistines. That is something that we can utilize when there are, like I just mentioned previously, when we ourselves are walking in the way. That can strengthen others, that can encourage others. They can feel that. They can feel the love because it radiates. It's love that radiates. It's truth, and it's encouragement. It's comfort. It's holy. It's holiness from the Lord. It's the Holy Spirit. And so also when you look at people who are leaders, who are leaders of shepherds of flocks and such, when you can see that when they're walking in the way, and they are encouraging their flock to walk in the way, their congregates to walk in the way. So that can be utilized today and in the future. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Saul's jealousy of David. After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. Okay, so Jonathan is Saul's child. Whatever Saul, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, comment section. Whatever Saul sent him to do, David did it so successfully that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the people, and Saul's officers as well. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and with tambourines and lutes. As they danced, they sang, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." Ooh. Saul's gonna be not too happy. Saul's gonna be not too happy with this song, and so what was the intention? What was the thought process? What was the feelings behind it? Was it intentional? Was it thoughtful? Was it not intentional? Was it taken too serious? There's a lot here. Sermons, once again. Let's continue to read. Saul was very angry. This refrain galled him. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. So just a quick pause. So David, from sheep shearer or sheep watcher, it's not shearer, sheep, tending sheep, shepherd, to defeating the Philistine, Goliath, major deal, and then working under Saul's army and being very successful at anything Saul sent him to do. And so now his popularity is increasing and it's making Saul very upset. And so David is about to have a little bit of some hard time coming up now. So that can happen because each of our walks is not going to be perfect. It's not going to be, congratulations, you're saved. The rest of your life is going to be, you're going to be at peace and you're going to be loved and everything. All those are true. All those are actually true. And those are, yes, but it's not talking about the challenges and our life. The love, yes, the love is eternal from the Lord. The same peace that you get is the same everlasting. It's him. It's the Lord. It's Jesus our Savior. So we have it, but it's not saying that it's not going to be challenging or hard. It's saying that you now know that you have hope. You now know that you have someone to turn to rely on, because it's this life's not fair. It's not easy. It's not going to be a cakewalk. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. The next day, an evil spirit from God came forcefully upon Saul. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the harp, as he usually did. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, "I'll pin David to the wall." But David eluded him twice. Ooh. He wanted to kill David. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David, but had left Saul. So he sent David away from him and gave him command over 1,000 men. And David led the troops in their campaigns. And everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in their campaigns. Saul said to David, "Here is my older daughter Merab. I will give her to you in marriage. Only serve me bravely and fight the battles of the Lord." For Saul said to himself, "I will not raise a hand against him. Let the Philistines do that." Dang. He's trying to set up David now, because if he couldn't kill him, then he was going to send him off to be killed. But David said to Saul, "Who am I, and what is my family or my father's clan in Israel that I should become the king's son-in-law?" So when the time came for Merab, Saul's daughter, to be given to David, she was given in marriage to Adriel of Maholath. Now Saul's daughter Milcah was in love with David. When they told Saul about it, he was pleased. "I will give her to him," he thought, "so that she may be a snare to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him." So Saul said to David, "Now you have a second opportunity to become my son-in-law." Interesting. So now he's like, well, since I'm not favored, you're not going to be favored either. Ha, ha, ha. Hate. Bring it past the present. Do people do that? Do you do that? Do I do that? Petty. Fair warning, we're going to go over today. Petty. It's sad. It's not right. It's not right. It totally is not right. Can it be fun? Can it be malicious and not right funny? Yeah, but at the same time, it's you don't want to be intentional and you don't want to be malicious about stuff like that. You don't want to be petty. People can say that it's okay. It may be okay to have pettiness or joking with friends and family and stuff at some times, but you do have to understand that we're all in a different place in our life at all different times. And so there may be a time where you may want to act a certain way or talk to someone a certain way and such, but it may not be appropriate. You may not know it. you may be getting signs from another person that everything's okay, but that's not necessarily the case all the time. So take caution. Once again, give it to the Lord. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Then Saul ordered his attendants, speak to David privately and say, look, the king is pleased with you and his attendants all like you. Now become his son-in-law. They repeated these words to David, but David said, do you think it is a small matter to become the king's son-in-law? I am only a poor man and little known. David, very humble. Man, we can all take note. Take note on this humbleness, man. Well, every single one of us, man, woman, every single one of us. Let's continue to read. When Saul's servant told him what David had said, Saul replied, say to David, the king wants no other price for the bride than 100 Philistine foreskins to take revenge on his enemies. Saul's plan was to have David fall by the hands of the Philistines. It just says it all right there. It's petty. It's like a challenge. The intentions was not good. They were malicious from Saul. Let's see what happens. When the attendants told David these things, he was pleased to become the king's son-in-law. So before the allotted time elapsed, David and his men went out and killed 200 Philistines. He brought their foreskins and presented the full number to the king so that he might become the king's son-in-law. So remember, Saul only said 100. They did 200. Presenting the foreskin. I mean, come on. Let's continue to read. Then Saul gave him his daughter Milcah in marriage, or Michal. When Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that his daughter Michal loved David, Saul became still more afraid of him, and he remained his enemy the rest of his days. The Philistine commanders continued to go out to battle, and as often as they did, David met with more success than the rest of Saul's officers, and his name became well known. So, no matter what, Philistines kept attacking Israel. David would go out and rout them. Also, Saul saw more and more that the Lord was with David. So he was getting jealous and more petty. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Saul tries to kill David. Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. But Jonathan was very fond of David and warned him, my father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning. Go into hiding and stay there. I will go out and stand with my father in the field where you are. I'll speak to him about you and will tell you what I find out. Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul, his father, and said to him, let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He has not wronged you, and what he has done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine. The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason? Saul listened to Jonathan and took this oath. As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death. Sounds good. Let's continue to read. So Jonathan called David and told him the whole conversation. He brought him to Saul, and David was with Saul as before. Once more, war broke out, and David went out and fought the Philistines. He struck them with such force that they fled before him. But an evil spirit from the Lord came upon Saul as he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hand. While David was playing the harp, Saul tried to pin him to the wall with his spear, but David eluded him as Saul drove the spear into the wall. That night, David made good his escape. So, that phrase in here that keeps coming up, but an evil spirit from the Lord. So, remember, Saul hadn't been doing what the Lord had been asking him to do over and over. So at this point, the Lord was just like, okay, He was allowing these things to happen to Saul at this point, because Saul was not wanting to walk in the way. He was wanting to do his own thing. The if you know, in psychological terms and sociological terms, you could say that authority, that kingship went to his head, or it made him feel like he could do what he wanted to do and not understand that it was from the Lord. The Lord's king, and he's, even though Saul is king over Israel, he's to do Lord wants him to do, but he's doing whatever he wants to do. He's not being caring for his people. And he's doing things out of pettiness, but the Lord turns that around. See, the Lord does that for us. And we got to think about this too. Because it does come up. So you have people and they do wrong. So we're in past, present, and everything. I'm going to talk about it because this is needs to be talked about. So you have this is one of those things that we can bring up at this time. So you have people, they may not follow the Lord. They may not, and they do pettiness, and someone who does believe, the pettiness doesn't work. The maliciousness doesn't work. It's like a boomerang back, right? You also have people who do believe, but they fall off the path. They fall, and I'm not saying we're not talking about salvation. We're talking about having their walk with the Lord. It's difficult. It's not easy. It's easy to sin. Easy breezy. It's harder to walk with the Lord. And so you have someone who could fall off or start not walking with the Lord. They may believe, but they may also allow for those thoughts, those pettiness, those maliciousness to come, because we're all human. And instead of not acting upon those, giving those to the Lord, they start getting vengeance themselves. They start doing things themselves. And so that is to speak about it. And so you can be someone who is following the way, may not be, they may be hurt. They may be going through it. They may be in, the psychological thing that people who are hurt want others to hurt. They want, and so think about those things. We are to think about those things. And so one of those things is encouraging that person, telling them, that you may be thinking maliciously, or you may not be thinking correctly. Let's bring the Lord into this, or take some time with the Lord. Take some time with the Lord and really try to understand what you're going through, what you're wanting to put others through, or what you're doing to others. Think about those things. Think about different ways of talking to others. If you are a person that is hurting and such, think about what you're doing. Think about, am I being malicious? Am I being facetious? Or am I being someone who is actually doing this because this is supposed to happen? There's a lot to think about here. And that goes for everyone, whether you walk in the way or not, whether you believe in the Lord or not, because it's something that once again, we need to humble ourselves and go before the Lord and ask for help and ask for forgiveness of what it may be. And those are things to think about. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Saul sent men to David's house to watch it and to kill him in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, warned him, "If you don't run for your life tonight, tomorrow you'll be killed." So Michal let David down through a window, and he fled and escaped. Then Michal took an idol and laid it on the bed, covering it with a garment, putting some goat's hair at the head. Did you get that? Get that? Remember, Saul. Why is Saul being allowed to be persecuted? Why is Saul? Let me try this again. Read it. So Michal let David down through a window, and he fled and escaped. Then Michal, remember that's his daughter, took an idol. Okay. And laid it on the bed, covering it with a garment and putting some goat's hair at the head. Now, maybe it's a translation thing. I'm not sure, but I believe it is something. It is something that is a cast image. Think about that. Remember, this is, again, during law, during the Lord's with them. However, they're having these things, idols and what have you. Who's allowing it? Who's teaching them? It's not the Lord. It's not coming from the Lord. Said, do not do these things. Accountability. So let's continue to read. When Saul sent the men to capture David, Michal said, he is ill. Then Saul sent the men back to see David and told them, bring him up to me in his bed so that I may kill him. But when the men entered, there was the idol in the bed, and at the head was some goat's hair. Saul said to Michal, why did you deceive me like this and send my enemy away so that he escaped? Michal told him, he said to me, let me get away. Why should I kill you? When David had fled and made his escape, he went to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. Then he and Samuel went to Naioth and stayed there. Word came to Saul, David is in Naioth at Ramah. So he sent men to capture him. But when they saw a group of prophets prophesying with Samuel standing there as their leader, the Spirit of God came upon Saul's men, and they also prophesied. Saul was told about it, and he sent more men, and they prophesied too. Saul sent men a third time, and they also prophesied. Finally, he himself left Ramah and went to the great cistern of Saku, because you know what's going to happen. And he asked, that was just me saying, and you know what's going to happen. And he asked, where are Samuel and David? So he's mad. Saul is mad. He done sent men over and over again, and all they do is prophesy. Basically start worshiping the Lord and prophesying, literally. Over in Naioth at Ramah, they said. So Saul went to Naioth at Ramah, but the Spirit of God came even upon him, and he walked along prophesying until he came to Naioth. He stripped off his robes and also prophesied in Samuel's presence. He lay that way all that day and night. This is why people say, is Saul also among the prophets? You may have all the intent you want to have, but when it's against the Lord's will, Lord is going to prevent it. Whether you like it or not. Try to do whatever you want to do to force something to happen, and it's just not going to happen. Now, sometimes we'll read examples. And we've read an example where the people asked and begged and wanted a king and begged for a king and almost try to make a king themselves. And the Lord was like, they're not rejecting you as leader. They're rejecting me as king, as leader. I'll let them have their king, and now they have Saul, and this is what they're dealing with. But also, when the Lord's has put his foot down, said it will not be. Think about it. Past and present. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. David and Jonathan. Then David fled from Naioth at Ramah and went to Jonathan and asked, what have I done? What is my crime? How have I wronged your father that he is trying to take my life? Never, Jonathan replied. You are not going to die. Look, my father doesn't do anything, great or small, without confiding in me. Why would he hide this from me? It's not so. So is that Jonathan being ignorant, or is it Jonathan just saying or just kind of being one of those, like, he knows, but he wants to also get a chance with his father to make sure that his father's not malicious. I'm not sure. Let's continue to read. But David took an oath and said, your father knows very well that I have found favor in your eyes, and he has said to himself, Jonathan must not know this, or he will be grieved. Yet, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, there is only a step between me and death. Jonathan said to David, whatever you want me to do, I'll do for you. So David said, look, tomorrow is the new moon festival, and I am supposed to dine with the king, but let me go and hide in the field until the evening of the day after tomorrow. If your father misses me at all, tell him, David earnestly asked my permission to hurry to Bethlehem, his hometown, because an annual sacrifice is being made there for his whole clan. If he says, very well, then your servant is safe, but if he loses his temper, you can be sure that he is determined to harm me. As for you, show kindness to your servant, for you have brought him into a covenant with you before the Lord. If I am guilty, then kill me yourself. Why hand me over to your father? Never, Jonathan said. If I had the least inkling that my father was determined to harm you, wouldn't I tell you? David asked. Who will tell me if your father answers you harshly? Come, Jonathan said, let's go out into the field. So they went there together. Then Jonathan said to David, by the Lord, the God of Israel, I will surely sound out my father by this time the day after tomorrow. If he is favorable disposed toward you, will I not send you word and let you know? But if my father is inclined to harm you, may the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely. If I do not let you know and send you away safely, may the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. But show me unfailing kindness like that of the Lord as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. And do not ever cut off your kindness from my family, not even when the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord call David's enemies to account. And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. Then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon festival. You will be missed, because your seat will be empty. The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid when this trouble began, and wait by the stone Izol. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though I were shooting at a target. Then I will send a boy and say, go find the arrows. If I say to him, look, the arrows are on this side of you, bring them here, then come, because as surely as the Lord lives, you are safe. There is no danger. But if I say to the boy, look, the arrows are beyond you, then you must go, because the Lord has sent you away. And about the matter you and I discussed, remember the Lord is witness between you and me forever. So David hid in the field, and when the new moon festival came, the king sat down to eat. He sat in his customary place by the wall opposite Jonathan, and Abner sat next to Saul. But David's place was empty. Saul said nothing that day, for he thought, something must have happened to David to make him ceremonially unclean. Surely he is unclean. But the next day, the second day of the month, David's place was empty again. Then Saul said to his son Jonathan, why hasn't the son of Jesse come to the meal, either yesterday or today? So Saul knew the customs. Remember, he clean, unclean, he was God's anointed. But at the same time, let's see what kind of thoughts and feelings he had still going on, especially towards David. Let's continue to read. Jonathan answered, David's earnestly asked for me for permission to go to Bethlehem. He said, let me go because our family is observing a sacrifice in the town, and my brother has ordered me to be there. If I have found favor in your eyes, let me get away to see my brothers. That is why he has not come to the king's table. Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse and rebellious woman, Don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of the mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send and bring him to me, for he must die. So he was insulting his own son. He was insulting his wife, or the woman that he had his son with. He was not happy. He was fit to be tied. He wanted David. He was like, I want to get out. Let's continue to read. Why should he be put to death? What has he done? Jonathan asked his father. But Saul hurled his spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. Wow, it took Saul, his own father trying to kill him, his son, for Jonathan to finally realize, my dad wants to kill him. Dang. Not only that, but he just tried to kill me. Families, especially when people are not giving thanks to the Lord and thinking right. It can happen. It just shows you it can even happen in families. There's a lot here. Lots of things to think about and pray about. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Jonathan got up from the table in fierce anger. On that second day of the month, he did not eat, because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. In the morning, Jonathan went out to the field for his meeting with David. He had a small boy with him, and he said to the boy, "Run and find the arrows I shoot." As the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called out after him, "Isn't the arrow beyond you?" Then he shouted, "Hurry, go quickly, don't stop." The boy picked up the arrow and returned to his master. The boy knew nothing of all this. Only Jonathan and David knew. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and said, "Go, carry them back to town." After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. Because they knew. They already discussed what would happen, and they knew. So let's continue to read. They were friends. Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever.'" Then David left, and Jonathan went back to the town. So, that's what shows you friendship as well. This we just went through quite a bit. Friendship, love, and friendship, as in wanting to help somebody and be there for somebody, encourage somebody, also warn them when things aren't going good. Also be there for them when things aren't going good. And so that's what Jonathan did for David. He was there to help David. He loved his father. He loved David, of course. He loved both of them. But he wanted to, he saw that there was nothing good going on there with his father's intentions towards David. So he wanted to make sure he warned his friend, his somebody that he loved, as he loved himself. And so that's an example of loving thy neighbor as thyself. Perfect example right here. Past, present. Do we do those things? So bad things do happen. Bad things do happen. Do we help the person? Do we help somebody? Do we help those in need? Do we warn them? Do we help them? Do we warn them? Do we do what we need to do? Do we do all that we can do? Those are things to think about. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's do a quick review. We are way over. Samuel anoints David. So we went through, we know that Samuel was told to move on. Time to move on. You've grieved over Saul long enough. We need to move on. Time is still ticking. And the time that I created, God's saying, God's like, let's go. Let's move. Step it up. We got things to do. Got things for you to do. You have work to do. And I'm saying you have work to do. We all have work to do. We all have a purpose. Think about those things. David and Saul's service. David had that faith, walking in the way, and that faith exuded, just came off him, and put Saul at peace for as much as it could. David and Goliath. David was not scared. The Philistines were making fun. Goliath was over there just making fun of challenging Israel, and the Philistines were all proud of it and happy because they saw how the Israelites were quivering in fear and stressed and what have you. And so then you have David. He's like, I can do this. I can take care of this person. This person he doesn't have a God. He has nobody. I have a God. I have a living God, and the Lord's going to be with me. The Lord's going to do this work. And it was able to defeat him with a sling and a stone. No sword, no shield, no spear, nothing. And once Goliath fell, the Philistines were routed immediately because they were in total fear and shock and what have you. And then the people of Israel, they were all happy, including Saul, until the people of Israel were singing songs about Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. Jealousy came up into Saul. Saul was not happy and wanted to kill David multiple times. But David understood that, but he continued to be faithful to the Lord's anointed, to the leader. And so he knew he needed to leave when the spear was thrown at him, and he knew he needed to stay away if he needed to. And then we see Saul tries to kill David over and over again. And then Jonathan tried to help the situation out because Jonathan loved David as himself. And unfortunately for Jonathan, you can say he learned the hard way, or he just learned that his father had no intentions of being nice to David. He did want to kill David. And so much so that he even went as far as potentially almost killing his own son. So we went over a lot. There's a lot there, lots to think about, including thinking about our walk in our faith and things and how we are on a day-to-day basis. Through all of that, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Thank you so much for joining me once again on another Lamp Bible study. I love these Lamp Bible studies. If you want to participate more, leave comments and email. If you have any questions, concerns, there's an Instagram page as well as this YouTube page. There's also an email address on the YouTube page under the contacts. If you have any questions, concerns, again, Lamp Bible studies come every Tuesday and Thursdays. Highlights come arrive throughout the week. Also flashlights. I think I'm going to try to post those every Friday. I think I'm liking that so far. I have lots of them. I just, time to post everything and get everything situated, it just takes time. And that's fine with me because I love this Lamp Bible study. And I hope it helps you too. It helps every one of us. Please continue to pray for me as always. I will always continue to pray for you. Let's see here. Another fantastic Lamp Bible study. Until next time, we'll still be in the book of Samuel. Wherever you are, have a blessed morning, a blessed day, a blessed afternoon, a blessed evening, a blessed night. God bless.